Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Voices of the Goddess podcast, where we empower, inspire, and uplift women to be the goddesses they were meant to be. I'm Julietta, the magical PT, co-host of this show, and as I said, I'm a physical therapist, and I help all people, but especially I love to work with women, getting their mind, body, and soul in balance so that they can function and accomplish all the amazing things that they want to do in their life. I am also, as you see here, a podcaster. I'm an artist, a jeweler, a community leader, an author, a super busy woman. And I wish I had more people out there supporting, so we create this podcast and bring it all together and learn amazing things from our awesome guests each episode. And I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Allison.
Hello, everybody. My name is Allison Mancini, and Julietta and I are both in South Florida, but I'm originally a Midwest girl from Michigan, been down in South Florida for almost 30 years. I have been married to my husband for 28 years. We have two amazing adult children, 25 and 22. And as you can see by my title, I am a human resources director for an amazing company called The Gold Digger Girl and a functional nutritionist, which is really where my passion lies in helping mainly women, but I do work with men also, but helping busy women and men really learning how to use nutrition to be their healthiest, because I do strongly believe that food is thy medicine. So I'm also a podcast co-host with Julietta, and we're in season 2.
Season 2, this is. How awesome is that?
Can you believe that? It's crazy.
Who knew when we started this?
I know. And it's so much fun. We have such a great time with it. So one of the things we were talking about as we were planning 2022 was how much mindset affects people, and really about like money mindset. And it's interesting because actually Kimberly, who I work for, she did a whole thing on money mindset on a platform yesterday that I was listening to. And it's just really interesting to me. I don't know how you grew up, but I grew up with the mentality that money was scarce. We always talked about how we never had enough. And I can always remember my parents saying money doesn't grow on trees, and this whole, scarcity mindset. And that plays into not just money, like other things in your life. So I've really had to reframe and relearn that whole mindset. And I've learned with my kids, I used to do the same thing to my kids. I used to say to them, money doesn't grow on. We don't have a money tree out back that we can just go grab, money off of. I have totally stopped doing that. And I have just looked at them and said, we'll figure it out. We'll find a way. I had to totally change that. And one of the books I read actually was recommended by you that really helped me.
Which book was that?
It was Get Rich Lucky. We'll just say B, but it's amazing.
Come on.
Get Rich Lucky Bitch. It was awesome.
So I can totally relate. Growing up, yes, money doesn't grow on trees, or what do you think I made of money? Mm-hmm. And definitely have struggled with the scarcity mm-hmm. mindset. And, one of my biggest lessons in that was for my 50th birthday, I decided no matter what, I was taking myself to Egypt. It was an expensive trip, but I didn't know where the money was coming. Because for 10 years, I said, I don't have enough time and I don't have enough money. Mm-hmm. Those are my two scarcity. There's never enough time and there's never enough money.
Right.
And I just said, I'm doing this. I'm declaring to the universe that I'm going to Egypt for my 50th birthday, and it's going to work out. And it was amazing to me the moment I made that declaration. The universe just conspired to put everything in place. Mm-hmm. A big chunk of money just magically landed in my lap. I mean, I had to work for it. Right, but it was, it was an extra job that came through that created the extra money that I needed to go do this trip. And, whenever I find myself in that situation that I need some money for something, I just declare to the universe that it's going to happen. That's setting my mindset. The universe conspires in my favor, and this is all going to work out. And it always does.
Well, I think that's awesome. And I hear stories like that all the time. But when I think when I look back at that book in particular, one of the best tips I think she gives, and this is so funny. So remember as kids, when you found a penny or a nickel or a dime on the street, you would pick it up, right? Because you're like, oh my gosh, it's a dime. Because back when we were kids in the 70s, you could go to the store and get quite a bit for a dime in candy and gum, right? But
Yep.
now it's like you see that penny, and as an adult, I would just like walk right by it. You know, honestly, how I used to look at it, I'm like, ooh, that's probably really dirty. I'm not picking it up, right? Like total terrible mindset. And one of the things that she talks about in that book is how pick up the penny, pick up the dime. You are bringing in you're thinking abundantly when you do that. So now every single time I see any coin on the ground, it's in my hand. I don't care if it's a penny. I picked up one the other day. I'm not even sure it could be legally called a dime anymore. It was so like scratched and you could barely see the face of it. I was cracking up, but I'm like, I'm going to be abundant. And you know what? It's really interesting when you start paying attention to things, you realize that things come into your life abundantly. You're just never paying attention to it. So it's pretty incredible.
All right, everybody, set your mindset abundantly.
Yes.
And so speaking of abundance, something new for season 2 is we now have a sponsor. Yay. So this month, our sponsor is Graciela Valdez, photographer extraordinaire. She's an award-winning, published, professionally certified portrait photographer specializing in boudoir and personal branding. She creates custom and concierge portrait experiences that are transformative and life-affirming. Whether an intimate portrait honoring your highest self or a professional and engaging portrait for your business, she makes pictures of who you are, not just what you look like. And I can absolutely testify to that. I have done both boudoir and professional branding shoots with Graciela. The boudoir, I chose to do it specifically for myself, for a healing, a self-love healing experience. And it really transformed how I view myself. And I have this amazing, some of you may have seen my my goddess me holding the moon picture. Mm-hmm. Any day that I'm feeling less than a goddess, I look at that picture and remind myself that's the powerful woman that I am, and I can accomplish anything. And Graciela is, man, if you need a little boost in your self-confidence, self-esteem, schedule yourself a shoot with her. It's amazing.
I've seen a lot of them, and I'm excited to have one with her. So
yes. So,
all right,
are we ready?
Yes, let's bring our guest on. She's been so patient. Hello, Maggie. How are you?
I'm great. Wonderful. Hi, Allison. Hi, Julieta. Thanks for having me.
You're
welcome.
Thanks
for joining us.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience in a few minutes. Let us know a little bit about you and what you do.
Sure. My name is Maggie Perotin. I'm a business and leadership coach. So in a nutshell, I give service-based solopreneurs clarity and tools to help them exceed their business goals and at the same time become really authentic and high-performing leaders in their business. I live in Canada, in Toronto. I'm originally from Poland. So my family, we're like an immigrant family. My husband is French. I'm Polish. We have 4 kids. We're a blended family with 4 kids. So we speak sort of 2 and a bit of Polish in their languages in our household. We love nature and books and reading and spending time together. So in a nutshell, quickly, that's me.
That's awesome. I love it. And Toronto is one of the cities that I have always heard is absolutely beautiful. And I think I actually was there as like a very small child, like a toddler, but I do not remember it at all. But I've heard it's amazing.
Yeah, it's definitely amazing. I invite you ladies to come whenever you can or feel like it.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and dive right into our questions. We are so excited to learn from you. So our first question, Maggie, is what is one book that you wish every goddess would read and why?
All right. So there's so many, but I do have one that's my all-time favorite, and it's called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And, it's really a book about self-leadership and becoming a better human in the process, but really a better leader of your life. And through that, not only creating a better life, better business, more money for yourself, but impacting all those people around you and, motivating them and inspiring them to be better. And, there's the 7 habits that the author goes through. They're very simple. It's not rocket science. And, that book really, I read it as I was entering like kind of high performance habits and so on. So it wasn't in the beginning of my journey, but it showed me how much impact we can have without even realizing them, and how, you can be, because as I heard you ladies talking about, money mindset and so on, and all of us, and a lot of us have that mindset that, oh, if I'm wealthy and rich, that means I'm going to be a bad human, right? We connotate being rich to being bad, and it's not true. Money and power really just emphasize who you already are. So if you're a good and kind human, money will give you more ability to do more good and more kindness and spread that in the world. And that book definitely projects that and shows you that you can be a good human and work through and make money at the same time, and make a positive impact. So highly, highly recommended.
Yeah, I love how you say that, because it's so true that more money just makes you more of what you already are. Like, it's so, you can see it in famous people all the time, or, you look at, I forget where, it was something I listened to. Actually, it might've been Kimberly was talking about how they do research on people that win the lottery. And part of the reason they go through their money so quick is their mindset is so off. Like, they don't have that abundance mindset, and they just run right through it. So it's really interesting. I mean, I know I read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People when I was very young, like in my early 20s. And, then I think I thought it was a good book, but I didn't really implement. But once I had kids, I know for me, it really impacted how I was teaching my children. Have you found, like, for you, how has that kind of played out in your life? How has that impacted what you do? Have you used those with your clients? Do you use those with your family? How do you?
In everything. I actually started with me and then with my family and so on, but with my clients as well. Like, the thing is that when you think about those concepts of leadership and business, when you distill them to like the simplest form, they actually help you everywhere in the entire life. So for me, it was just that, like, amplifying. I remember, and I'm sure you remember that story about, actually it was author that was in the subway in New York, and he came in, and like, we often judge people, right? Like, we get upset in traffic and so on because we have that judger mindset, and it's not natural that our brain goes that way, the primitive brain. But learning not to do that can have such a huge impact on how you feel and how you perceive other people, and then what you do about it, right? So he goes quickly into a subway, and he sees a dad with like a bunch of small kids, and the dad kind of sits down, and it's, doesn't pay attention, and the kids are loud, they're running and disturbing people and so on. So he sort of automatically went into judging, the person, saying, thinking, about dad, the kids are bothering people and so on. So then at some point he started, like, he wanted to point out to the dad that the kids might be disturbing a little bit, and he started saying something. And the dad was like, you know what, I'm so sorry, I didn't notice. We're just coming back from the hospital. Their mother passed away. So we never know, right? We get upset, people in the traffic, but we don't know what that person is going through that cut us off, right? And maybe they're human. Maybe they just didn't notice. And it happens to us too, right? We're not perfect. So that book is full of those like really powerful moments that gets you rethink of how you act, who you are. And then, there's some great tools, great habits that help you become a high performing person as well.
I love that. I love that example too, because let's be real, as parents, there are moments where you just can't even handle what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever. Yeah, you just kind of throw your hands up and you're like, okay, you just go run crazy. Almost, I can remember times being like that, and I was actually grateful that, like, another adult said something to my child, and I would look at them and be like, yeah, well, that's what you get. Like, you're misbehaving. You're not listening to me. Maybe you'll listen to a stranger. You know what I mean? So yeah, I get that. All right. So question number 2 is, what is your top self-care practice and how does it support you in your everyday?
So I would say my top self-care practice is my morning routine. And I developed it over time, right? I didn't start with that like morning miracle, whatever. There's this book, right, about morning routine being at 2 hours and so on. I didn't start like this. It started with just one meditation a week, right? And me just wanting to be less stressed and having more patience for my little kids, because by Thursday night I was like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. I was losing my patience and I didn't like that, right? I felt terrible as a mom and so on. And I had to change something. And I came across mindfulness and meditation. And all I could do at that time is really just on the weekend, one meditation. And then I started noticing how that just one thing for 15 minutes a day can positively impact me. And then it started from there, and then I added like 30 seconds of breathing exercise every morning. And then at some point I added like 5 minutes of stretching. And that was the whole thing I was doing for quite some time, because I was still working my corporate job, and I had to commute 45 minutes one way. It's Toronto, and my kids were little, and you had to drop them at daycare and all those things. I didn't have that much time. I had 5 minutes right in the morning. And then it developed into, as COVID started and we had a little bit more time, no commute and so on, into more of a structured, I have a breathing time and I have a stretching time, and now I can add a daily meditation of 10 minutes and all that. But that has been truly something that just works miracles.
Yeah, I think we would both agree. We journal, we meditate. We are both true believers. And I find it so interesting because I was actually recommended by a functional medicine doctor almost 14 years ago to meditate every day. And I remember like in my head laughing at him, like, you've got to be kidding me. Because I just didn't get it. And it's so incredible to me. Once you start, it really, like, to me, it feels good, and it doesn't have to be long. And that's the one thing, like, Juliet and I always reiterate to our audience, like, if you've never meditated before, it doesn't have to be for long. You can meditate for a minute or two, just start somewhere. So yeah, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I was like you. I was like, meditation is not for me. My brain always goes, how am I ever going to switch off my brain? But that's because you don't understand what meditation is all about, right? Yeah. It's not about that. And, you mentioned journaling. It's the same. I do journal every day. And it's such a powerful exercise. And it could be just literally 3 things. It can take you 5 or 2 minutes. And it's such a powerful impact.
Yeah, I agree. Awesome.
Absolutely. So even though we do our self-care and everything, some days it's just difficult to show up. And so question number 3 is, when you're having one of those days where it's difficult to show up, what tools do you pull out of your back pocket to make it happen?
All right. So there is a few, but like, first of all, I would say the primary tool is really building up self-concept of a person. I call it self-leadership, but we can call it whatever, but building up self-concept of a person who does what they decide to do. So a person who makes intentional decision. I don't just do because, somebody think I should, or I'm like on autopilot. I don't really realize what I'm doing, but I'm intentional about the majority of things I do in my day. And I commit to those decisions. And then, putting aside like things like, being sick or emergency happens or so on. Like, let's just talk about a day when we're not like feeling at our best mentally, right? We all have them. We all have ruts. We all get stuck. That's normal. So having that self-concept definitely helps. Now, it doesn't mean it's easy when you're in the rut. So then, having the tools like meditation and the morning routine can help you get out of it. Right start in the morning, right? But then, so I divide those tools. Even for my clients, when I teach them high performance, I say you have tools for the maintenance of your mindset. So when you do something every day, even if it's 5-minute meditation, what it does is those days of a stuck in a rut don't happen as often. Mm-hmm. And even if they happen, you get out of them faster. So it doesn't take 3 days anymore. It might take an hour or 3 or whatever, but it's not a week, right? So that's one. Right. But then the second is the tools of it, like a repair, right? So maybe you have a car, you maintain it, you change the oil and so on, it runs. And then when it breaks, you still need to repair it, right? Mm-hmm. So then you have repair tools. And then it can be anything. Like it really, for me, depends on how bad it is and what works that day. It could be, I divide them into sort of 3 areas. So there's an area of building that self-confidence and self-trust, right? It's like, oh, maybe I'm in rut because I lost confidence in something, I'm doing something, it's not working out, I'm working hard and whatever. That could be journaling, but longer, right? So I sit through and I remind myself of all the things that I did figure out that maybe in the beginning didn't work, but they're working now. And that situation is not that much different, right? So if I figured out this thing, I can figure out that. So for example, right? Then there's tools that help you reground yourself and calm down. So let's say if you're not feeling well and you're like in this spin of busyness and so on, maybe you just need a walk in a fresh air or a dance or just another meditation just to bring yourself and calm down, right? Mm-hmm. And then the third, area of the tools, I'm like, just have fun. So maybe it's a dance, maybe it's a bath, maybe it's something, again, that doesn't have to be expensive, something that just brings you joy, brings back that joy because you lost it, right? Mm-hmm. So sort of like, I don't have any like one simple answer, it's just different tools for different things.
I loved how you were talking about, you deciding and having intention. And I think it's so easy when we're having a difficult day and we're struggling to just fall into that victim role. Mm-hmm. And it's so much more empowering when we acknowledge that we're the ones in control of our life, mm-hmm. and mm-hmm. we decide what happens, and mm-hmm. set your intention to create what you want to create in life. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's okay to have a bad day, right? And it's okay to allow yourself to feel defeated or discouraged and so on. But what you don't want to do is sort of stay in that feeling and let yourself pity yourself for too long and fall into that victim mentality, right? Mm-hmm. Just having a compassion and self-love to feel it, but then also kicking yourself in the butt at some point saying, okay, I know it's hard, but hey, you've done so many things in the past, you can figure that out. So let's do it, right? And what is it that will help me? Maybe just taking a break and going for a walk and just getting some fresh air. That might be just enough. Yeah.
It's like my mom would always say to me, pull up your big girl panties and move on, like pull it together. And you know what? I tell my kids that when they have a bad day, because we all have bad days. We're all saying that. We all have those bad days. But I think you made such a good point, Maggie, is when you create that intention and you have that, you're committed to certain tasks and you create that intention in your life and you have those, like you said, go out for a walk, meditate for a minute, journal for a second. You are able to bounce back from those bad days much quicker. But I always tell my kids, I'm like, go upstairs, go in your room or bathroom. You've got 15 minutes. You got 15 minutes to cry, do whatever you need to do, scream. I don't care. And when you're done, you need to reframe your mindset, reset your intentions and come back down and let's go on with this. Right. So I mean, it's a learned skill. It's absolutely a learned skill.
Yeah. I do exactly the same for my kids. I'm like, go out, do whatever, and then don't come back
until you can pull it together.
And like one more thing that you reminded me of is really sometimes putting ourselves in a perspective, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe it's easier for me because I was born in Poland during a communist regime. So like there was nothing, you didn't get anything, you didn't even have basic freedoms. And there were some fun stories that I always I can share in another time. And or even like looking back at my grandparents, right, who went through war, who lost everything. They were forced to move. They didn't want to and had to, right? And started from, and, you know, my grandfather who passed away, but he was always such an optimist no matter what, right? So sometimes I remind myself of it. I'm like, come on, you're living in a free world in Canada. You have roof under your head, over your head, you have food in the fridge, you don't really miss anything, right? So putting yourself in a place when you have everything you need, truly, in this moment, right? So be grateful for it, and then pull yourself back up, and then do whatever you wanted to do.
Yeah, I love that perspective. That's a perspective we all could use, right? Is that we are in a free country, and very grateful for that.
All right. Our final question is, what life experience has formed who you are today?
Okay, well, I think every life experience forms who we are, right? So if we look through our lives, though of course there's ones that have more impact than others, but it's a never-ending journey. And but when I was thinking about this question, I thought, okay, well, how far back can I go? And something that really impacted me, so outside of like communist regime, I think it was actually divorce of my parents. So my parents divorced when I was about 11, so I kind of remember. And, they were a good couple. There wasn't anything like we weren't a pathological family with abuse or whatever. They just didn't work out, right? And there was whatever, and they decided to part ways. But, there was a bit of drama. Of course, there were emotions and so on in it. So the three things that when I thought about it, that that sort of event, taught me as a child, so I was 11, is first of all, is that there's no point of being with someone in a relationship for the sake of being, right? And how I came to that, because the only thing I can remember from my parents being together is them having arguments. And as a child, it was terrible. Like I would close the door in my room. I didn't want to listen to that. And sometimes if I had a friend over, I was embarrassed because they had those arguments. And when they actually divorced, my dad lived very close, so we could always come and see him. I actually felt relieved that I didn't have to listen to those arguments. I still had lived with my mom. My dad was still there, available at any time, loving and so on. And that sort of taught me that I'd rather be alone than just in a relationship for the sake of being with somebody in a relationship. And then the second thing I took out from it is not to let anybody tell me what's better for me or not, and how to live my life. And that was because I saw my grandparents, from their love for their own child, not in interfering, but talking separately to their own children about the situation and kind of enhancing that, well, you're right, he's wrong, or you're right, she's wrong. And not really helping by maybe helping the marriage to stay, or just staying out of it and letting my parents figuring it out. And they actually, I really think they contributed to the whole situation, right? So my parents quickly learned, don't try to tell Maggie what to do, because Maggie will get upset. Maggie wants to do her own thing. and that was something. And, it's sometimes there's always pluses and minuses to that, but I quickly learned that, I know what's best for me, and I'm going to listen to what I think. And if I want an advice, I would just ask for it, but don't try to give me your own advice unsolicited. And then, the third was really that we're all human, because I think as kids, we idolize our parents and we think that they're perfect, right? So quickly, no, we're not perfect. We're all human, but it doesn't take away from our ability to love somebody and give and be there for them and so on. So that's sort of those three lessons I carried with me all my life.
I love how you took that experience and grew from it and took positive from it, because so many people that I talk to, if their parents divorced when they were children, they just talk about how devastating it was, and it was just the worst thing that could ever happen, and it destroyed them, and as adults they're still not getting over it. And so I love to, and it just shows how every human experiences life differently, but when you can take something that the vast majority of people perceive as a very negative experience, you took it as an opportunity for growth and learning. And I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And hopefully, someone listening can maybe change their viewpoint on that experience. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, she just changed mine because my parents got divorced when I was 12. And a lot of what I've always looked at was how devastating it was, truly. I mean, I do know there are good things that came out of it, but I've really never sat and thought, okay, how has that really shaped who I am in a positive way? And I need to focus on that. So thank you for that, Maggie.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Love that. So Maggie, if there was one thing that you would want our audience to remember from our time here together, what would that be?
I would say the one thing is always start with you. So if you want other people to be better, if you want other people to improve, if you want to change the world for the better, because you see how much, maybe not positive things there are, start with yourself. Be the person you want others to be the person, you want to be in 10 years. Start being that person now, and you will see how much you can actually create positive impact around you when you do that.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it is time for us to wrap up here. So first, I want to thank you, Maggie, so much for showing up. You brought tons of wisdom to the show today, so we really appreciate you being here. I also want to say thank you to our audience, our listeners out there. You've brought us to season 2, and for that, Allison and I are very grateful. So thank you all for listening. If you've liked what you've heard today, please follow us, like, comment, and share with your other friends out there. There are so many women that can benefit from hearing the tidbits that come out on this show. And also a special thank you to our sponsor, Graciela Valdez, Fine Art Photography. And I want to wish all of you a magical day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, ladies. It's been a pleasure. And thank you for all who are watching.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.